Hello everyone, my name is Anthony Johnson, and welcome to my latest challenge within this tile-based game project called Tournamental. I was recently tasked with trying to take a fellow peer's mechanic and implement it into my version of Tournamental. The peer that I decided to go with was Dominic Cuffey. I was using someone else's mechanic at first, but his mechanic ended up running into several different impediments, which issued broken mechanics for my spike traps, so I just couldn't continue to go with that driver mechanic. So Saturday I had shifted over to this one, and this is the progress I've made since then. So as you can see, this is where I pick up my item. I add a little sound there to collect it, and then when I bring it over here, you will see that the handle will then appear where the mechanism is, and it will be pulled down, and then the doors will follow by being opened. Now let's go ahead and progress forward. As you can see with the next door coming up and the door behind us, the very first door we went through, these handles are already pulled down and the handles are already there, signifying that you do not need to find anything for them and that you can just proceed right through them. As to where this one does not have anything, so I need to attach the handle that I had just found. Moving on to my second level, this is where I introduced my first mechanic that I had ever built, which was spike traps that shift on a timer event. I figured this would make the player have to really think about their timing for grabbing key items and maneuvering through the level. Probably should have gone for that. Right at the end, too. Alrighty, let's try to speed run through this. Now moving on to level 3, this is where things really start to become challenging. Not only do I use the versions of my traps that shift on timer, but I also use the version of my traps that shift from a dispatcher. So every time that I move, the spikes will shift, which means I have to think about my movements and be cautious with my movement. Then I also have to think about when I move due to the spikes that are on a timer. And I also have to think about where I'm going due to the collectibles that I have to find. Oh, darn. You have to be cautious when moving between these spikes because, as you can tell, the player does move faster than the spikes shift, so sometimes you can end up hopping right onto a spike trap as it's shifting. This one you just really have to be patient. Because I can already tell what's going to happen. Once I get through here, I'm going to have to go back because I will not be able to progress forward. So I'm going to have to step on one of these spikes to shift them. Now I can collect this key item. Then I can push this box off. Come back here and do that one more time. Shift the spikes once again. And now I can proceed forward. So here, the player does want to be cautious because if they mess up here, they will cause it to where they have to reset. You always want to start with one of the side ones. When you start with the side one, then you can push that one forward. Oh wait, because I don't want to kill myself here. Then you push that one forward, push it forward again, go here, turn left, push that, and then you can collect your key item, and that beats my final level that I have to show for my driver's mechanic. Alrighty, so now we'll hop over to the editor side of things, so I can now show you exactly how I built everything, and how the logic works for everything that I've built. Alrighty, so back on the editor side of things, I'll show you exactly how I created this whole mechanic. So, starting from the ground up, well, it was a very basic mechanic for starters. I had implemented exactly what Dominic Cuffey had implemented, so I just originally had a keycard that I designed, and then besides this keycard, I had basically just taken a block such as this, and this block would get destroyed anytime that I had that keycard. But I decided to shift that functionality into my own functionality, which, in my opinion, has a lot more visual aesthetics to it, and a little bit more, I guess, the player gets to interact with stuff more, it seems like. So what I had done is I just took my original spikes that I used for my spike traps to build a left and right door out of spikes. Then I built trimming for all of the spikes to then have something to retract into, so it looked fitting. And then from there, I had to build a fitting key item that was a collectible, but I want them to also be able to interact with the door. I didn't want the door just to simply just randomly open up out of magicness, so I wanted it to make sense. So I created a handle for the key item, which the player would have to collect. And when the player collects this key item, as you saw in the first level, and the levels moving forward from there, that once you collect this key item, you'll then reattach it to this mechanism, pull the lever down, and then you will open up the spike door. And that's exactly how I built my mechanic to work. Now, let's go hop over to the blueprint side of things so I can show you exactly how it actually works. So hopping over here to the entity key item, first things first, I get the forward direction, and the main reason I do this is so right in the beginning of play, you will not notice all of the key items that I place around the map. So if I have a level with like 4 doors or 3 doors that you have to open, you won't notice all of the key items rotating at the same exact pace, at the same exact direction, just doing the same thing. So it doesn't just look like copy and pasting everywhere around the level. Now I can like set one in one position and say, hey, you're going to start your rotation in the up direction. Then I can put another one in another part of the map, say you're going to start your rotation in the down direction. And I can put another one in another part of the map and say, hey, you're going to start your rotation on the left side of the direction. And this will make sure they all look like they're rotating at different paces. But beyond that, I had also implemented a timer event on event tick where I can control that. I will come and show that logic here in a moment because I want to go through it in order. So off of event begin play, you can see we set a timer by event. What this event is checking for is, hey, do I need the key card? And if I do need the key card, we basically will allow this to loop. But if I don't need the key card, then we're going to say, hey, this no longer needs to loop. We can go and turn this event off. But what this is basically doing is it's just making my key card float up and downward. So, well, not key card, key item, aka the lever handle, is just floating up and downward in the game editor. And that's all that I'm doing here with this little bit of functionality from event begin play to this set relative location node here. Then moving on from there, on event tick, this is where I implement rotation. So how I implemented rotation was I set 1 for rotation speed so I can control the variable for rotation speed. The base speed that I set it for is 60. And then from there, I set it to rotate on the z-axis. From there, I multiplied that logic by event tick's time interval. And that will make it to where it will rotate at this speed for every second that event tick kicks off. And then we move up here and we're basically just telling, hey, we want the lever handle to rotate. So that'll add the rotation functionality to it. Then we come down to the bare bones logic here, which was the very simple version, or not the very simple version. It's a little bit more of an advanced version of what Dominic Cuffey originally had going on here. So what I'm doing is I'm telling it, hey, do this once because I don't want them to re-interact with that square and kick off the sound a bunch. So we say, hey, do this once, so you'll get that sound for grabbing an item one time. And then after you grab the item one time, we're basically sending a signal to the door where we hop over to the doors functionality, and we're just saying, hey, we collected the key card. So now the door knows, hey, we have a key card. So moving back to this logic, then I also turn off this variable as I stated up here, so this functionality stops looping in the background. Then from there, I set the visibility of my handle to disappear in editor, so we'll no longer see the handle just chilling around there. Then from there, we switch the tile to can enter, so the player then can enter the tile. And now thinking about it, honestly, you could probably switch this one to destroy actor as well, so you could take off a lever handle and destroy actor instead of set visibility. But let's go ahead and move forward from here. So moving on to entity door, we're going to start from event begin play. So on event begin play, we're doing that same little function that I showed you guys earlier for setting the forward direction. And this is because sometimes I have doors that are at different angles. So I need to make sure that the door can line up with the direction that I want to interact with it from. So then continuing forward from the forward direction logic, we take a branch to check, hey, is the door currently open? And the only reason why this branch exists is due to my construction script. Like I showed you, some of those doors I set to be open, and a lot of this logic is basic logic that you will see here momentarily, but I will still show it in the construction script for visual sake. That's basically all the logic that I have going on here. As you can see in the beginning, we call for, hey, set the forward direction. And then from there, we just branch off and we say, hey, this is the door and its open position, and this is the door and its closed position. So from there, we check, hey, is the door open? If the door is open, then, or this is the logic for, hey, is the door open? It's basically all we're doing is we're using that is open variable. And if it is open, then we're setting the handle to be not hidden in the viewport. So from here, you can see as we move down and get into the actual logic of the bulkiness of this code, we basically had created an event off of interact, and for event interact, we check, hey, does the player have the key item? If they don't have the key item, then we branch down here and we check for construction script logic. So what we're doing here is we're just making sure, hey, is the construction script going to interfere with what I'm telling it to do next? And then after that, we check on the false branch, so we make sure, hey, no, the construction script isn't going to interfere. So if the player does not have the key item, make sure the door is set to not enter. So basically right here, I'm setting the door to not be enterable, and then I'm warning the player, hey, you need to find the lever handle. And I did make this instance editable, so if I ever want to make a different door mechanism or a different key, I do have the choice to come back here and change the string on the fly. So then let's come up here and go down the true logic. Coming to the true logic, I tell it to do all this once because I don't want the character being able to repeatedly interact with the door and kick off these two sounds. So basically, we do all this logic once where we set the actor hidden in game. We make the lever handle reappear for any door that originally was set to be closed. So now once the handle reappears, we kick off the sound for the lever being pulled, and then we also kick off the sound of a spike trap. So from there, the only reason we kick off the sound for a spike trap, by the way, is for the spike traps shifting open, the door getting pulled open. Then from there, we basically tell, hey, my timeline is going to play what I want you to do once I play the timeline. I set up a sequence to do 3 different events. So on event 0, what we're doing, after we make the little handle appear, I set a rotation rut at the base of the handle, which I'll show here real quick in the editor. So you can see here is my handle. And if I was rotating from the handle alone, then I would have rotated from up here, which is not what I wanted. So I'd set a scene rut to the bottom of it and created that as a rotation rut. Alright, so moving on from there, we just rotated it 90 degrees to make sure it looks like, hey, the handle's being pulled down. Then from sequence event 1, we are basically just taking the right door and we're shifting it from its closed position to its open position. And then from event 3, we're just taking the left door and we're shifting it from its closed position to its open position. And once all that is complete, then on event finished, we're just saying, hey, now the current tile can be entered. And that is basically all of my logic that made this all work. I hope that was a good enough explanation for you to understand where I was going with this. But yeah, I would have done a lot more polish. But the first half of my driver week was dedicated towards trying to add this functionality into my project. But it had a lot of impediments that came with it, and I ended up having to shift my driver mechanic during the last 2 days that I had for this sprint. So that everything that you saw is basically what I was able to pull together within 2 days, not having to worry about debugging. So I truly do hope you enjoyed everything. Thanks for watching.